Well, good day. I hope everyone can hear me. My name is Jeff Picher. I am an arborologist on the tech support team for Rainbow. And today we're going to be discussing a pest that has been around since probably the late 90s called the emerald ash borer. And I'm sure you've heard of it before, but we're going to go over this pest and see what changes that might have occurred over the last, say, 15 to 20 years. So just a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already, when you registered and used and entered your ISA certification number, please do so at the in the question box. And also during the presentation, if you do have some questions, please type them in. And Peter Vu is going to be the administrator for this event today, and he will we will have a question and answer session 45 minutes from now, and we will address the questions that come up, and if we don't have enough time, we will get back to you in the future. So before we get started about the emerald ash borer, I wanted to talk about an event that Rainbow started 3 years ago, and it's called Saluting Branches. This is a civic project that the founder of the company, Tom Prosser, began by going to cemeteries, especially the one national cemetery in Minneapolis, and providing a day of service. And it's a way of us trying to pay back the veterans by keeping the cemeteries and keeping their final resting place safe for their visitors and their families. Last year, we worked in over 45 cemeteries, and we generated approximately $2.5 million worth of work. And it's a great cause. And if those are interested in signing up this year to work, whether you're a groundman or a tree climber, or whether you do plant health care, anything that you can do will help, even if you're just there to help with the registration and the distribution of lunches and what have you. So please keep that date in mind. Something that you probably know about Rainbow is that we network and we partner with many different organizations around the country, and we do a tremendous amount of research trials. And these trials are done out in the real environment, and so we want to make sure that the products that we offer and the equipment that we offer will deliver predictable results for our clients and their customers. Our goal is, through the tech support team, is to make sure you thoroughly understand the products that we offer and that and the equipment that we offer, so you know how to use them and try to eliminate any of the pitfalls that might exist in any treatment that is done in arboriculture. So this would be some of the items we want you to take away from the end of the session today. How to understand what emerald ash borer looks like. There are a lot of other problems that ash have, and I think we all know that they've got ash yellows and they've got anthracnose, and there's some other borers that also will affect ash trees. So these signs are going to distinguish emerald ash borer from these other problems as well. And understanding that you can't act too soon with this problem, especially when it comes to budgeting for either the removal or the treatment costs for the particular pests. As you know, Rainbow, we take this toolbox approach. There are various treatment options, and each option will depend on several factors: where the nearest location is for emerald ash borer. It will also have to do with your budget and how well adapted or adept you are at doing these various treatments, whether they be trunk injections, soil applications, or bark sprays. And so we're going to explore all of these different avenues. So emerald ash borer, as you know, it is an exotic invasive pest that comes from Asia. It entered this country back in the late 90s in the Detroit, Michigan area, and they expect, or they feel, that it came in on wooden packing crates that contain auto parts destined for Detroit, coming in from China. So this is the adult that we're looking at right now. It's in the Arborologist genus, and Arborologist is another. There are several other Arborologist borers. One of them is the photo down below of the two-line chestnut borer. You can see the insects are almost identical in shape, not color, but just shape. And they also are related to the bronze birch borer. Again, similar looking insect in size and shape. However, these are native. The two-line and the bronze birch borer are native. The emerald ash borer are not. One thing they all do share is the same size exit holes, shaped in the letter D shape, and they are approximately about 1/8 of an inch wide. And you'll find them mostly up in the upper canopy of the tree, but as this insect infestation progresses, you will find these even down on the root flares, and I've seen that in the past. Sometimes this insect can be confused with the red-headed ash borer, but their exit holes are a different size. And where you can see, for comparison, you can see they're much smaller, 1/8 of an inch. If you take a look at the larva, the emerald ash borer larva can range in size. They can grow up to 1 inch, maybe 1.25 inches in length. And one thing that distinguishes the EAB larva from, let's say, the red-headed ash borer is looking at each individual segment. You'll notice that it takes on the appearance of the shape of a bell, so we call these stacked bells. And so that's what you would look for. Another symptom of this particular species is the galleries. The feeding galleries are in the shape of an S. And sometimes these galleries can go, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 inches in length. And you notice this zigzagging sort of pattern that they create. They do also pack their frass or sawdust in the galleries. The frass is left behind. Or certain other borers, like the lilac borer, they will push the frass out of the exit holes. And here's a comparison of the red-headed ash borer. You can see the larvae are much different looking compared to the emerald ash borer. Some of the early symptoms that give some indication of the presence of EAB are woodpeckers. Woodpeckers have the ability to sense the presence of the larva, and so they will start flecking, causing flecks, or another term that's been used is called blonding, where the ridged bark had been chipped off by the woodpeckers in order to gain access to these galleries and then consume the larva. And so this is one of the earlier signs. One of the challenges with emerald ash borer is you may not see the symptoms show up for maybe 1, 2, or possibly 3 years. So you've really got to really do a very close inspection by sometimes climbing the tree, because where the infestation begins is in the upper third of the canopy of the tree. So it's very challenging to get up there and look for those symptoms. This ash tree on the left looks nice and healthy. You really wouldn't even think twice of looking at it, but it does have a small infestation of emerald ash borer. Some of the other symptoms are bark cracking, and so they are very challenging to detect. Now, just because you see the large photo on the right of that ash, the top starting to die back, don't make any assumptions that that is emerald ash borer. As arborists, we have to be very adept at our being very accurate with our plant problem diagnostic skills. So the number one thing that you have to do is identify the plant. And so make sure you are looking at a fraxinus and you're not looking at a hickory, for example. Because I've seen in the past in my travels, people are injecting hickory trees thinking that they're ash trees. So first thing is do your plant problem diagnosis. Make sure that canopy is declining for the reason that we're here, to try to find the presence of EAB. Sometimes that canopy dieback could be caused by something else, either a broken branch or some girdling cable or something like that could be causing the same symptoms. So do your plant problem diagnosis. One of the problems, not one of the problems, one of the indicators is when you see these adventitious growths or epicormic shoots, as they're called, and usually they are at the transition zone where you have healthy tissue and dead tissue at the same location, and the tree puts a tremendous amount of energy into these growing points, and you will get these 5, 6, 7 foot long whips. And one thing you'll notice is that you'll see the foliage sometimes can be 2 or 3 times larger than normal. These are all indicators. These photos on this slide, if you see your ash tree at that point, most of the time the vascular system has been so damaged by the feeding of the larva that you'll no longer be able to get enough pesticide up into the canopy to give yourself adequate control. So these trees pretty much are ready to go through the chipper. One thing about EAB, the symptoms are very challenging. It's very difficult to show up. But once they build up, they take off very, very quickly, and those trees will die. So these are some symptoms at the early stages where there's very little symptoms. Then you will see some woodpecking possible, looking for bark splits. Then you start to see the canopy decline in year 3 to 4. And then after about 5 or 6 years, that tree is dead. And so EAB spreads in several ways. We all know that ash wood is a great wood for firewood and fireplaces. One of the main reasons, it dries out very, very rapidly, and thus it's ready to be burned very, very quickly after being cut down. The adults can fly, but if they don't have to, they will remain on the host plant. But primarily, it's spread through the shipment of nursery stock, firewood, of course, and also rough sawn lumber. And as I recall, Maryland was infested by a shipment of ash trees from Michigan, and that is how that passage jumped from Michigan to Maryland. And the owner of the nursery did not observe the quarantine. And so, unfortunately, I think that person was fined for that action. But again, we have to keep firewood within the quarantine areas, and also have your nursery stock inspected. And one of the things that you'll see is these infestations, these outbreaks, usually occur near campgrounds. So you know, if you're transporting firewood, let's say from Illinois, and you're going out to Colorado, it's very possible you could be bringing the larva out there with you on your vacation. So giving a little bit of a close-up, you can see the bark is being chipped off. And if you look at close-up, this is what's called blonding. And you'll see where the woodpeckers have come in, chipped the ridges off. And obviously underneath the bark, you can see the galleries where the larvae were doing their feeding. There's a death curve that's associated with this pest. Deb McCullough, she was basically the author of this, along with Dan Herms and a couple of other people out there, Cliff Sadoff. So in the early years, you can see it's very difficult to detect. You don't get much dieback or death. But then as this insect gradually increases exponentially in numbers, that's where you get your rapid mortality. And what happens in many municipalities that are heavily planted in ash trees, you get a tremendous number of trees dying all at once. And that becomes a real challenge financially and also operationally, trying to get all those trees down as quickly as possible. Here's an example. This is Chad Tinkle, who used to be a forester in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And you can see just in a difference of 2 years makes. Obviously, these ash trees were not treated, and so one of the challenges is trying to get these trees taken down with a very minimal budget. And also, one problem with ash trees, once they die, they dry out very rapidly and they collapse. And you would never ever put a climber in a tree like this, because there have been some fatalities where climbers made an attempt to climb declining or dead ash trees for removal purposes, and the tie-in points had failed and they fell. So how can this insect grow so rapidly? Well, the female lays anywhere from 60 to 100 eggs. Most of those eggs will survive, and 50% of the eggs are female, the other half are male. And so if the insect is laying 80 eggs, if you can do the math, and you can see how exponentially these insects will grow, and if they stayed on the same tree for 5 years, we're talking about 204 million larvae. So it grows very, very rapidly, and the tree will most likely die in anywhere from 4 to 5 years. So why isn't that car parked underneath that tree? It's for the main reason these limbs will fail. And unfortunately, these trees are too far gone to be saved. Because of that reason, we can't get distribution of the product throughout the canopy. And so which trees do you save? Well, this is where your plant problem diagnosis skills come into play. What you do is you want to preserve, at least I want to see legacy trees, specimen trees preserved. And so this tree on the right is a tree that I injected several years ago with droll spees from Rainbow. And this is at Princeton University. It's hard to tell by this photo, but this tree is located in the center of this courtyard, which is a dormitory. The only access to this center of this courtyard is through this arched doorway right here. So we were trying to calculate what would the cost of removing that tree be, since it's so inaccessible. And so we were working on the numbers. We said, well, you'd have to get a very large crane to come in and take that tree out, or the other option would be to cut it up into very small pieces and manually walk that out. So obviously that's going to cost probably tens of thousands of dollars to remove, but it is such a good specimen, they chose to not remove it, or not to, they chose to treat that tree. So there is a group of entomologists throughout the country that got together back in 2004 to start research. And they wanted to do these trials. They wanted to see what treatment options were available out there. And so they did quite a few experiments. And so this is somewhat of a summary of the different options that we had when treating emerald ash borer. And this is a great publication. If you can look at the bottom, look at the website, emeraldashborer.info. Just Google that, and this is available online. This will give you some more detailed information about how to deal with EAB and its control. So the products that we're using, it depends on many factors. Which product you use depends on many factors. Imidacloprid can be applied as a soil injection or soil drench. That is one of the least costly treatments. Emamectin benzoate, that would be arbormectin. There's another few emamectins out there. There's triage. That is a trunk injection. Dinotefuran. This would be Transtec. That is done as a systemic bark spray, or it can be also soil injected. And then azadirachtin, which is a neem product, can be injected into the trunk. So what are the treatment options? It depends. It really does depend. It depends on where the insect is currently located. If this nearest infestation or find is located more than, let's say, 15 miles away, you may want to hold off on your treatments until it becomes a little bit closer. And then in the early, it's best to treat early rather than late. And because when the symptoms show up, many times it could be very close to being too late to do the treatment. Here's some information about the life cycle of the emerald ash borer. At this point in time, it's in the pupa stage, and in about a month from now, maybe 6 weeks, this insect will emerge from the plant, from the tree as an adult, and you'll see that coincides with the emergence and the flowering of black locust trees, Robinia pseudoacacia. And so what happens, the female comes out and she does some feeding on the foliage of the ash trees, and then she mates, and then she starts laying individual eggs, up to 80 or 100 individual eggs high up in the canopy of the tree. So these eggs are small and they're up high, and it's very difficult to detect from the ground. And then what will happen is those eggs will hatch, and they immediately starts doing their damage. And you can see there's the larva. As they start to progress in size, the galleries become larger and the damage becomes more substantial. Then there's the gallery, that's the damage that's done by the larva, and then they go into the pupa stage. So that's pretty much the life cycle. So there are treatment methods out there, and so which ones do you use, can you use? What are the pros and cons of each of the different treatments? What is your budget? And so one of the first things you do, whether you're a homeowner or whether you're a municipality, you do an inventory. You do a tree inventory. And while you're doing that inventory, you look at the tree. What's the rating of it? Does it have good condition? Does it have any structural defects? Does it have any other indications of decline from other problems? So you're not going to treat all the ash trees. You won't be able to treat all the ash trees for expense reasons if you've got a forest in your backyard. On the other hand, it's going to be very expensive. Either your options are to treat them or to remove them, and those are your options. As far as soil application, you use the imidacloprid, which is Zytec, or the dinotefuran, which is Transtec. If, for example, you do not have access to the soil for whatever reason, then you would either go with a bark spray, spraying the first 5 feet of the bark, or you can go with a trunk injection, and that would be with emamectin benzoate or another product called azadirachtin. So, first of all, we have to evaluate the condition of the tree. Trees that are, let's say, in the 30 or 40% rating, I would say these trees would react and should be able. You should be able to control the emerald ash borer because you still have some of the vascular system intact. Once that tree gets, say, 40 or 50% decline, I would suggest and recommend that tree not be treated. For the main reason, you're not going to get distribution of the insecticide evenly distributed around the canopy. So you can get pretty good results in this area right in here, and but homeowners are going to come out and they're going to say, I want you to do everything possible to save this tree. Well, you have to be upfront and honest and say, and tell them if the tree is beyond hope. So these are the different treatment options. Depending on the tree size, some work better in smaller trees, some work better in larger trees. But the takeaway with this is emamectin benzoate really works on any tree size, and that product will work provided the tree's vascular system is still somewhat intact and it hasn't been too compromised, because you need distribution. Also, while you're doing your plant problem diagnosis, inspecting your trees, it gives you an opportunity to rogue out the poor quality trees, the trees that are over mature or that have some structural defects that wouldn't justify treating them and trying to preserve them. I would just reserve the emerald ash borer treatments for keeping those trees that have some value, that are not going to outgrow their sites between the sidewalk and the curb. Those legacy trees, those specimen trees, in my opinion, those would be treated to preserve them, or in some cases, staging for removal. Some municipalities are treating ash trees that they intend to take down. And the reason they're treating them, to try to slow down the death curve. They don't want to have 10,000 ash trees dead on their hands all at once. And so they're trying to, like, again, stage these trees for removal. And the big question is always asked, when should I start the treatments? Well, that depends on where the nearest infestation is. So anywhere from 0 to 15 miles, I would recommend doing the treatments. You can start out earlier doing the Zytec or the imidacloprid treatments. As the pest pressure increases, you may have to go to emamectin benzoate or ivermectin. If you do discover a tree that has a very low infestation, you want results fairly quickly. So if this is in May or June or July and you notice that it's too late to do the imidacloprid treatment because of the slow uptake time, you can do a bark spray of dinotefuran or Transtec and then get that population under control. And oftentimes in the fall or next spring, you can go with a high double rate of imidacloprid or Zytec. So the timing, when you think about it, we want to make sure that we are applying these products properly. Imidacloprid can be applied anytime the ground is not frozen, so that's nice for scheduling reasons. So you can start as early as early March and apply up into May, and then it's going to take several weeks or a few months to get up into that tree to be present when the larvae are doing their damage in August and also into September. Emamectin benzoate has to be applied when the tree is in full leaf, and also dinotefuran, again, Transtec, dinotefuran, the same thing, and also with the azadirachtin products, they have to be applied when the tree is in full leaf to get good uptake. And so you do not want to apply dinotefuran or Transtec in the fall, as I mentioned a few times, because the active ingredient will not be present the following year. So the message is you want these products, whatever products you decide to use, to be at the highest levels as the larvae are feeding. The young larvae are more easily controlled than the large, mature larvae. They will succumb to the lower rates when they're very young. So how do we apply these products? This is one of our technicians using an HDI soil injector, and that injector has many uses. You can use growth regulators through it. You can use Lepitec, you can use Zytec, you can use Transtec, and you inject this product right into the root zone around the base of the tree. You do not want to use fertilizers through this unit because it's only designed for these treatments and it's not recommended that you put salt products or corrosive products in there that fertilizers often contain. The reason we're going close is that's where the higher levels of fibrous roots are located. Bark spray, very easy to do. This is how you apply Transtec. You would take 6 packets of Transtec, add it into 1 gallon of water, and you mix it, and you make the application at the rate of 2 ounces of the ready-to-use solution per inch of trunk diameter. No surfactant or no penture bark is needed. This product, as I mentioned earlier, is very soluble and will go right through that bark in several days and get up into the canopy of the tree. Here are some of the rates for these different products. On smaller trees, smaller than 15 inches, you can use 2 milliliters per dBH inch in a sufficient amount of water. On trees that are larger than 15, I would double that, go to 12. Same thing with the water-soluble packets. Some people like that versus the 2F, the flowable. You put 1 packet to control 24 dBH inches, or in the larger trees, you've got to double the dose, so it'll only treat 12. Dinotefuran, the Transtec, as a soil application, you use more product in the soil than you would as a bark spray. My suggestion would to do a bark spray. Much easier to do, but there always are conditions where someone would not prefer to do a bark spray. One of the methods to inject emamectin benzoate or ivermectin is through the Q-Connect system. This is a plugless system that is very simple to use. One thing that we do at Rainbow, as you know, is we provide tech support, and we also provide demonstrations and in-the-field training. And this is one of my job responsibilities, to come out, work with clients, to show them how to do the treatments properly so they get the uptake in the shortest amount of time and they become profitable. And that's really our goal. So tree injection using emamectin benzoate, you can go as low as 5 milliliters per inch of DBH. Now, the undiluted active ingredient is directly injected into this trunk. Some people do dilute it slightly with water to make it go up a little bit more rapidly. But in my experience, I've had no problem as long as the ground moisture levels are adequate and the tree is in good overall health. You shouldn't have any problem. It could take anywhere from 5, 10 to 15 minutes at most. So when the pressure is really high on large diameter trees, we recommend going to the 10 mil rate. A really good publication that I would suggest that you get is the Best Management Practices for Tree Injection. This was co-authored by Dr. Tom Smiley from Bartlett Tree Experts and Sean Bernick. He is Vice President at Rainbow Tree Care. Where do we inject? So as I mentioned earlier, there are pitfalls to everything. And when it comes to tree injection, you could have a world of difference just by a matter of inches. This is a cross-section of a tree, as shown by Dr. Tom Smiley from Bartlett, showing the presence of sapwood. What we need to do is to get these injection sites in where the sapwood is the thickest, and for several reasons. You get better uptake, better distribution, and also you get faster wound closure as well. And to me, this is probably the most important aspect of doing tree injection. Make sure you use new bits, but these are not just any ordinary bits. These are high helix bits that are razor blade sharp, and these will cut through the xylem versus burnishing them and cauterizing them if they were not a sharp bit. So these are sharp at the tip of the bit, and they're also sharp at the helix. We would recommend that you replace these bits every 5 to 10 trees, or every 80 to maybe 120 DBH inches. You're going to see an amazing difference. If you used a dull bit, you could be there 2 or 3 times longer if you used a sharp bit. Now, with tree injection, there always is that issue of wounding. We wound trees anyway. When we do pruning, we put in eyebolts, we put in cables, for example, lightning protection. Trees have a way of compartmentalizing around these wounds. So, you've got to make that decision. Which is worse, the death of the tree or a wound on the root flare? So these are some examples of tree wounding. For me, I wouldn't have injected so high. I would go a lot lower. Using plugs sometimes causes splitting of the bark and cracking. As you can see, the plugs have to be set at the right depth, and that's why I prefer going with a plugless system. I know we're kind of getting down here, a couple more minutes left, but the tree has a way of compartmentalizing. As you can see, in the past where this tree has compartmentalized, and for example, Rainbow has been treating elm trees in Minneapolis, St. Paul for 40 years. And they've been doing them every 3 years. So they've been done quite a few times. Those trees do not show any wear or tear from the multiple injections that are made every 3 years. And so the trees are healthy and they look fantastic. So looking at it operationally, how many trees as a technician or as an operator can you do? So depending on the application, with soil injection or soil drenching, soil injection will go much more rapidly because you don't have to do a root collar. If you're doing a soil drench, oftentimes you have to pull the sod back, pull back the mulch, and pull back some of the organic matter in order to come in contact with the mineral soil with the actual treatment. Trunk injection sometimes can go slow, can go fast, depending on soil moisture conditions and the health of the tree. As far as bark spraying using Transtec, you can spray a lot of trees depending on their location on that property, and you can do even up to as many as 30 trees in 1 hour on the same property, provided they're fairly close by. So what does all this cost? Okay, so these are treatment costs based upon the different products. As you can see, soil injection with Zytec would cost you as an operator, the chemical cost would be $648, and so your charge has to be above and beyond that, of course. So your out-of-pocket cost for product, $12.96. For emamectin benzoate, $62.40, and then with the dinotefuran Transtec spray, $82.50. So pro and con: imidacloprid, it's fast, easy to apply, very inexpensive. You can apply it as long as the ground's not frozen. It takes a lot longer for uptake, and we also are restricted with a restriction on the label of pounds of active ingredient per acre. So that's why it's not a bad idea to use a combination of a couple of treatments in order to get around that. Dinotefuran Transtec, very fast, especially during bark spray, gets up there quickly, and it's also got limitations. And finalizing right here, I just threw that little cartoon in there. Treat emerald ash borer before it's too late. I'm just kidding, they don't get that big. But I saw that photo and I thought it was pretty interesting. So emamectin benzoate, guaranteed, gives you 2-year protection, therapeutic, could be preventive treatments. There is some wounding. You do need to do some training, and this is what we do at Rainbow. We can give you some guidance and some training, and it works very well. And that is the end of the segment right now, and if there's any questions, please type them into the question box down below, and I appreciate your attention, and let's see what sort of questions we have out there. Okay, let's open this up. Let's see if I've got some questions. Okay, I do see some questions there. Okay. Oh, maybe that was the one question. The slides are not changing. Any questions out there? If there are, please put them in the chat box. And if not, please feel to contact Rainbow. Contact your territory manager by going to treatcarescience.com. And if you need some one-on-one training, this is what we do. Either territory manager will do that, or the arborologist like myself. We have several of them there. We're more than ready and willing and able to come out and work with you to deal with your with the training and to make sure that you're proficient. I don't see any questions. Oh, I do see a question. Okay, so one of the questions was the soil drench compared to, see, I can't see that question for some reason. Okay, Don Churchill, there we go. Let's see. So I have, let's see, what percentage of the canopy does the chemical move through with soil drench compared to trunk injection? The product is distributed through the same vascular system. So I would say probably it's going to be about the same. If there's damage in the vascular system, you're going to get restriction of soil applied products as well as trunk injected. Okay, another question here for Northern Illinois. We have been treating since 2012. When do you expect that we can start extending the triage treatments? Okay, we've been treating since, to extending it, you're talking about increasing the duration in between treatments. There's some trials out there. Cliff Sadoff out of Purdue is got some data he's going to release very soon that even as rates as low as 5 milliliters of emamectin benzoate will give you 3 years of control on even large diameter trees. So that's sort of encouraging. Sometimes once the EAB has come to a municipality and most of the trees are gone, other than those that have been treated with let's say emamectin benzoate, some arborists are going back to the imidacloprid, the less expensive soil applied products at the highest rate. Okay, so I think someone else asked there, John Kanan asked about how more effective is injecting versus Zytec. Well, Zytec does take time to get up into the tree. It is effective. Zytec is effective when the pest pressure is lower, where emamectin benzoate, it's very effective even at low, medium, or high pressure. However, it comes with costs. And the other question there was William Borden. Up to what size diameter do you recommend for drench treatments? You can do drench treatments on small trees and even up into the larger trees. But you do have to increase the rates. On anything over 15 inches in diameter, you have to use the higher rate. Okay, and let's see, I am located 100 miles north of Detroit, and EAB is very present in our area. I was at a client's property this morning, and they have an ash tree with no signs of EAB. It has never been treated. Are there some select? To my knowledge, no, I have never heard of that. All fractionists are equally susceptible, but that is incredible. You're wondering if you have some genetic diversity there going on, but that is incredible that you're not showing any signs of EAB. You may want to contact someone from maybe Deb McCullough from Michigan State. I'm sure they would be very interested in looking at that tree. Okay, I think we are pretty much done, and I appreciate your time, and thank you for your great questions. And again, if you have any questions, please contact treecarescience.com, contact Rainbow, or contact your local territory manager. We're here to help you become successful and not just doing emerald ash borer treatments on a wide variety of treatments that exist out there. So that's what we're here for. Okay, I appreciate it, and I will. I'll talk to you soon. See you in another webinar. Thank you.